Franz Kafka is justifiably famous for his bizarre and imaginative fiction. From his books like The Trial, The Castle, and The Metamorphosis, as well as his short stories, he's given us a new adjective, Kafkaesque. Many people who love Kafka's fiction have misconceptions about him. I used to be one of them. I used to think Kafka was a socially isolated little clerk working in and oppressed by a large bureaucratic organization. He was maladjusted, subject to depression, phobias, paranoia. Basically, he was mentally disturbed. Because of his personality disorder, he was an adequate but unexceptional employee. His work was tedious and routine, and he devoted all of his intellectual energy to his fiction. His fiction expressed the view that bureaucracies are nonsensical organizations that puzzle the mind and destroy the soul. Part of the problem is the way Kafka is portrayed in popular culture. These images I'm showing you represent artists' conceptions of what Kafka was like, and they suggest that Kafka was crazy. Not Charles Manson or Hannibal Lecter crazy, harmless, but pathetic. And his fiction is mainly interesting as a window onto his disordered mind. This view is flatly contradicted in a new book called Kafka, The Office Writings. Herr Dr. Kafka worked at the Accident Insurance Institute of the Kingdom of Bohemia, based in Prague. He worked with his heart. He did his work very well, and he was a great success. Now look at these photos. Really look at them. This is not some tortured, neurotic little clerk. This is a competent, confident, young professional man. He was one of the first Jews in his country to have a law degree. He may not have cared for his work at the Accident Insurance Institute, but he did it very well. He was rapidly promoted. He had good interpersonal skills. He had many friends. He had romantic relationships throughout his life. You would probably have liked him if you'd known him. Kafka needed all his legal skills and knowledge to do his work. The Workers' Accident Insurance Institute was established in 1887 to promote safe workplace practices and collect fees from employers to provide compensation for injured workers. Kafka joined the institute in 1908. Kafka's job was complex and demanding. He took it very seriously and he did it very well. Now, he did tell his family and friends that he didn't really like the work. He thought it interfered with his work as a writer. Still, he rose rapidly in the organization. He resigned in 1922 because of tuberculosis, but by that time he had become the undersecretary to the head of the institute. Because of his high rank and his law degree, he was referred to in the office as Herr Dr. Kafka. The workplace regulations Kafka helped put in place saved many lives, maybe thousands. And it wasn't just lives he saved. This is a page from one of Kafka's technical reports about a safety device the Institute required employers to put on wood planing machines. As you can see, this machine tended to cut off fingers, but with the safety device, it stopped that. So Kafka saved a lot of body parts too, just about anything a machine can cut off or poke out. He was constantly reading reports on gruesome industrial accidents, and being Kafka, he put a humorous spin on it. Listen to what he wrote in a letter to his friend Max Brod. He says, "In the 4 districts for which I am responsible, people are constantly falling like drunks off of scaffolding and into machinery. All the props are falling over. All the embankments are becoming unstable. All the ladders are slipping. Whatever people put up high falls down. Whatever they put on the floor, they stumble over. Girls are constantly falling down the stairs of porcelain factories with mountains of crockery. It is enough to give you a headache." Because we have misconceptions about Kafka's work life, we often miss important parts of his fiction. People think his fiction is about himself, his neuroses, his preoccupations. But the protagonists in his fiction also represent the kind of people that the Institute dealt with. People caught up in bureaucracies trying to understand them. Kafka wanted to help these people. It was his job. This gives us a new way to read Kafka's work. Take, for example, the metamorphosis. Gregor Samsa awoke from troubling dreams to discover he had metamorphosed into a giant insect. The standard interpretation of this masterpiece is that it deals with issues important to Kafka personally: alienation, his father fixation, the struggle of the artist for self-expression, and so on. But try reading it as an allegory of disability. Gregor Samsa's work has driven him to a nervous breakdown. What if he's not really a bug, but merely thinks he is? What if his family's reactions of horror are not to a real bug, but to a man who thinks he is one and behaves like one? There's a 2003 Russian movie that portrays Gregor Samsa in this way. The images you've been seeing are images from that movie, and I've included a link to the movie in the description of the video. Also get insight into Kafka's attitude toward his work by looking at a short piece he wrote called Poseidon. Now in this piece, Poseidon is not so much the god of the oceans as sort of the chief administrator. And it's a job he doesn't really like, but he's very conscientious about it. A video of this piece, and it's included on the playlist. There's even stronger evidence for the influence of Kafka's work on his novels The Trial and The Castle. But that's a subject for another video. Let me just sort of sum up here. Through his work at the Institute, Kafka helped save thousands of people from being killed, and who knows how many from being maimed. He was not only a great writer, he was a great man, a bureaucratic hero. You know, government bureaucrats have always gotten a bad rap. All these stories about the incompetent bureaucrat, the nitpicking bureaucrat, the lazy bureaucrat. Our president has taken this to a whole new level by slandering and obstructing every government bureaucracy that stands in his way. Then he shuts down the whole government for a month for good measure. I think it's worth remembering at times like this that most government bureaucrats are honest, decent people who are trying to make a living and do some good. They're worthy of admiration. And some of them, like Kafka, are heroes.